One of the more recent questions that I got in my private Discord server was from a longtime subscriber and supporter of the channel, CJ, and he asked, would you start your LLC the same way now versus how you did when you started? What would you change and what would you do different? And how that info might translate into opening a brick and mortar local coin shop today in an area with no local coin shop, etc. So let's talk about it. All right, so there's a couple things that I would have done differently when starting my LLC. First of all, for those of you that aren't aware, I am a teacher, but I also am a precious metals dealer, and I have a precious metals business where I buy and sell coins and collectibles, etc. So yeah, there's definitely some things I would have done differently when starting out in this business, if you will. I've been buying and selling silver and gold and collectibles for the last 6 years now, but it wasn't for, I guess, for the last 5 years that I was an actual LLC. Essentially what had happened was I got into the auctions and the buying and selling just by accident. I was looking to essentially increase my watch time on my YouTube channel so that way I could get monetized. I had no interest in becoming any sort of precious metals dealer. And what had happened was it was increasing my watch time because it was keeping people on the live streams, but I was also making profits. So I said, oh, wow, though that was unexpected. I was hoping just to break even, but making a profit at the same time, heck, I may as well do it again. So I did it again and again and again. And lo and behold, here I am, doing this now for 6 years. And it wasn't only until a year in that my accountant said, you know what, you're bringing in a significant amount of sales. You're going to probably want to go legit. So I did start the LLC. But the one biggest mistake that I had made when I started getting into this was that I didn't get my reseller certificates done. And for those of you that are wondering what is a reseller certificate, essentially it's a certificate that your state's Treasury Department would have. Essentially, you would have to fill it out with your LLC information. And what it allows you to do is you send this form, it's usually a page or two, you send it to these different wholesalers and online dealers, and it prevents you from being charged tax from those dealers, because essentially what's going to end up happening is you're going to be taxed when you have to pay sales tax or your income tax. And I didn't know about this. So what happened was for about a year, I was sourcing all of my stuff at regular retail prices, and I was paying the sales tax on those pieces. So I already went into selling with an increased cost on my end. And so my profits were less. And I finally found out about this. And pardon me. So I was kicking myself because I didn't know about reseller certificates. And so for that whole year, I had spent quite a bit of money just on taxes alone. So hard lesson learned. But those of you that are thinking about getting into this, that's something that you're going to want to look into, is essentially get your LLC started first and then try to go for those reseller certificates so that way you avoid having to pay the sales tax. Now, you might be in a state where you don't have to pay sales tax on precious metals. Good for you, but there's still other states that do charge the sales tax on the precious metals. The other thing is, in order for you to get accounts with wholesalers, you need to be in business sometimes for at least a couple of years, and you need to have contacts to give you references within the industry. So some of you might say, oh, I want to be able to get wholesale prices, so I'm just going to start an LLC. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes they actually will ask you to provide them with proof of your sales and your revenue, and the certificate that shows when you started your business. So there's a lot of information that you're going to have to provide to the wholesalers in order to even work with them. The other thing too is you're going to want to look at having a oh man, what's the name of it? There's a form that you have to basically fill out by the government that essentially says that you have an anti-money laundering procedure in place. You have to essentially know who it is that you are doing business with. So there are some individuals who I have done a lot of deals with who essentially purchase quite a bit, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth from some of these individuals. And in order to prevent any sort of, money laundering, you have to know these individuals. So that's going to make you have these standard operating procedures in place. You're going to have to provide that to some of the wholesalers because they don't want to get into trouble if you are involved knowingly or unknowingly with any sort of money laundering. But you also will need to get these individuals driver's license photos and things of that nature because again, you have to know who you are doing business with. If something seems shady, you are essentially required to say something about it and to report it. The other thing that I would say I wish I had done sooner was to get all of the different payment platforms set up with a business account right off the bat. So I started with just PayPal, but eventually I ended up having, Zelle, Cash App, Venmo. So I would say you could look into all the different payment apps as a way to get money and payment from your customers because you want to give them the most options possible. I can't find the envelope for this stupid thing. You want to give them the most options that you possibly can because you want to encourage them to spend with you. And if you're only taking payment in one form and not the others, you're essentially going to lose potential sales. The other thing I would also say is be very careful with taking credit card payments. I do not accept credit cards, and that helps protect me as the seller. But what has happened, and I've known this to happen to some people, is that they would take credit card payments from people, and the individuals would then send them their mailing address, but the shipping address would be different than the billing address, which is a major red flag. And so what would happen is these people would send out the items to the person, and then as soon as the person got the pieces in hand, they would then do a chargeback. They would essentially say that they never made this charge or that it was fraudulent. And so what happens is the credit card is going to then side with the person that bought and charge you back. And so what happens is the person now has your item, in this case like gold, and they got it for free and you're stuck holding the bag. It sucks. It's happened to me before. And then I wised up to the different signs that essentially are red flags, and it hasn't happened to me since. So you got to be careful. I would suggest do not take credit card payments. I'm trying to think of others. Oh, here's another one. Be careful who you do business with. And I'm saying in terms of partnerships. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but be careful who you introduce your customers to, because the people that you introduce your customers to might end up taking your customers from you. I've had something like that happen recently, which I'm not going to get into further detail other than an individual. I essentially introduced customers to them, and they ended up taking some business from those customers who could have been doing business with me and those transactions with me. So once I learned about this, I essentially cut the individual off and will no longer do any types of transactions or business with them. I'm trying to think if there's any other things that I would do differently with regards to an LLC. Oh, yes, a business address. That's another thing you want to do is make sure you get, and I found the envelope, get a business address. I have UPS as a business address. You're going to have to look with your state to see what they allow. I know a lot of states will not, like New Jersey, for example, will not allow the P.O. boxes as a business address, but they do allow UPS, a private mailbox, and that's because you need to have somebody there to sign for legal documents if needed. So look at getting a business address. The other thing too is, and I've said this before, is you want to make sure that you have a good name or a brand name. Make sure that you spend a lot of time thinking about this. How are you going to differentiate yourself from other stacking channels and coin shops and businesses in and around your area? What's going to make you different than them? What is your value proposition? That's another thing that you want to think about. Trying to think of any other things. Oh, should you be a brick and mortar? Because that was part of the question. Should you be a brick and mortar business, or should you be like an online seller? And the thing is, like what I do, I'm a social media seller. The benefits are with social media, you don't have a lease. Unless you wanted to have like an office space, but you don't want to essentially take on more that you can chew. So if you end up taking on an actual physical location, you're then responsible for the lease unless you own the building. But you got to make sure that you're paying your bills and the rent. And sometimes there's going to be some down months in the precious metals industry. Right now, for the last 6 months, collectibles have been very challenging to sell. The market's been changing significantly. So keeping that in mind, if you want to be an online seller, a social media seller, that's great, but you also have to remember that's going to take you a lot of time to build up trust. I've been doing this for 6 years now, which is more or less why I've built up some trust within the stacking community, because I've been around for quite a while and I've had nearly 300 live stream auctions. So people know that they can trust me. I'm not going anywhere. I've been doing this for a long time. Track record shows, and I've got a lot of the repeat customers to prove it. So if you're looking to become a dealer or a social media seller, you want to, that's going to drive me nuts, this little red plastic thing in there, and I can't get in there. Anyhow, you're going to want to make sure you start now, because it's going to take a while to build up your brand and, start building up that name recognition. But those, I would say, would be the main things that you want to kind of consider. If you decide to get a physical location in a local coin shop, just know then, that's going to have to be your primary focus and your main job. And you're going to be dealing with all different types of people. I honestly, for me personally, I don't want to have to deal with, the 86-year-old lady that comes in with her sterling silver and is, taking up all of your time, hemming and hawing over the pricing and everything like that. I don't want to have to necessarily deal with the general public. So that's part of the reason that I don't have a physical location. Plus, like I said, I'm a teacher, so I don't want to necessarily, quit that for a coin shop. Plus, I don't have you have to know your wheelhouse. I'm not really big into numismatics. I don't really have relationships with any refineries, although I could easily start building my own relationships with refineries. I don't feel like it. I don't want to, spend more time and mental energy going down that road. But those are all things that you would end up having to do. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Some of you have asked me about this before, so I figured it would be a good time to kind of do a little update. But let me know in the comments below, have you ever thought of being an online dealer or having a local coin shop of your own? And I will see you guys on the next one.